So I guess what I'll just start with is, first of all, a disclaimer. I've been working on this for a long time in one way, shape, or form. It started off as a different kind of project. We then transitioned towards what it is today. And then all sorts of bits and pieces, all various components of the technology have come together in a kind of disorganized fashion to eventually form like the Declaration project as it currently stands. Now, I've tested on my own devices, but the issue is that there's a whole bunch of devices out there. On every device, there's a bunch of different browsers, and every browser has a bunch of different versions. So there are so many different iterations of the internet. So it's impossible to test everything all at once in a way that's 100% guaranteed to work at all times. And the reason I mention this is once I let this loose tonight and people go out and try it for themselves, there is always the possibility that errors or issues may arise. And all I say, if that does happen, I hope it doesn't, but if it does, bring them to my attention. Everyone knows my email address, so please just provide that feedback to me. And then I'll try and find an issue, because often issues that look big and scary and terrible are actually really easy to solve. It's just a minor oversight on my part. So anyway, with that out the way, I'll show you, I'll share my screen and I'll quickly run through. And now bear in mind, whilst I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to see your questions and comments, but feel free to leave them in there and then I'll get around to them at the end. So we're going to share my screen. All right, you'll probably see a big tunnel of screens here. I'm going to go across to this page here. So this is the landing page of the campaign. There's two ways you can reach it. It's hosted on FaceChamber, which is my website that I've been operating for a while now. So if you go www.facechamber.com.au/declaration project, that'll take you to this page here. Otherwise, another way you can do it is www.declarationproject.com.au, and then that will automatically redirect to this page here. So there's a couple different ways to reach it. This video, many of you may have already watched. That's the video overview of what this is all about. Designed to be a little bit fun, a little bit user-friendly, light-hearted. And then you can come down here as well and watch an explainer video. Now, this is much longer. It goes for about 20 minutes. It's very similar to what I'm doing right now, actually. But that's just for those who aren't quite ready to dive in head first and they would rather see me do it first. They have an opportunity to watch that video there. But when they're ready to create their declaration, they come down here, hit Create Declaration, and we're here at the start of the process. So, an overview of what this is all about. First of all, we're writing our story. Now, what stories are we writing about? At the end of the day, it's up to everyone. It's your testimony. You can write what you want. What we're encouraging people to write about is specifically the ways in which they were harmed and negatively affected by the pandemic response. You know, we've spoken before about the mandates, the lockdowns, the border closures, the heavy-handed policing, the censorship. There were so many different elements of the pandemic response which were a blatant violation of our rights, the vaccines being a massive one. And so many people were affected by that. I've got in my database close to 12,000 testimonies from people who have, and that's actually what sparked this idea in the first place, but 12,000 testimonies of people who were harmed as a consequence. And that is really only the tip of the iceberg. And that's the sad thing about all of this is what we see and what I'm aware of is just a little bit on top of a vast ocean of pain and suffering and good emotions too, you know, resilience and hope and motivation and determination and all of those good things. But we can't forget that there was a lot of harm and suffering caused during that time. And that's what we want to encourage people to talk about, because the people who caused that harm, the people who caused that suffering, their objective, make no mistake, is to sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened. They all know in their heart of hearts that what they did was wrong, that what they did was never morally justified. They did it anyway for whatever reason, and we can speculate about their motivations, but they did it anyway. They caused this harm. They know that, and now they're trying to hide from accountability. And that's a large part of what this misinformation, disinformation stuff is all about. So by us coming out and telling our stories and presenting them in a way that's hard to dismiss, then we keep fighting, we keep the fight alive. We ensure that it's not all in vain and that we can eventually bring about some good from this. So that's a long saying. What are we writing about? We're writing about our stories. We then generate them, and I'll walk through this all in a moment, but we then generate them. So we use the program that I've created to take the testimony that we've just written and to turn it into something which meets all of the different legal and professional standards, so that it is a valid statutory declaration, which you can then edit and then download and then print on your own. We then find a witness. I won't talk about this too much now. That'll be the second half of this webinar. But in order for the stat dec to be valid, it does need to be signed in the presence of a qualified witness. So there's two ways of doing that. One way is to go out in person. So a justice of the peace, pharmacists, police officers, nurses, teachers. If there's anyone in your community who has those qualifications, then by all means, you can go out, you can print your declaration off, take it to them, get it signed the traditional way. Otherwise, for people who like the efficiency or the convenience or the relative anonymity of doing it online, they can do that as well. So we've got a database of witnesses that we've been building particularly over the last 48 hours, but even before then. And these are all people with the requisite qualifications who can be that witness. And then we're going to be utilizing another thing that I've built, which is a video conferencing tool, which allows that to all be done very quickly and easily online. But I'll talk about that at the end. And then join the fight. What are we actually doing with our declarations? Again, I'll come back to that. FAQ, I encourage you to read in your own time. It's just a few prominent questions that we often get asked. That's something you can do in your own time. First step in the process is putting in your basic information. So I'm just going to put in mine here. Now, bear in mind, this is a legal document, so everything you put in here has to be true and accurate. There's a phone number. You don't have to do that. That's optional. The declaration does need one contact detail, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your phone number. So you can put that in or leave it if you want. If you don't put it in, then you'd have to put your email in later on. Then there's an address. So we can put in a residential address or a work address or an address at which you can realistically be contacted. So it doesn't have to be a home residential address, but just an address that you do spend a lot of time at, which in theory, they could send a letter to if they wanted to. Now, in practice, it's probably not going to happen. I highly doubt anyone will get any kind of physical correspondence, but it is something that, again, is a legal requirement. So I'm just going to put in 123 Main Road. Now, one thing I want to point out here, in order to get the formatted address with the residential address and the suburb and everything, we're piggybacking off something that's provided by Google. But I understand that not everyone likes Google for obvious reasons. Now, there's nothing sinister or malicious about this autofill thing with the addresses. However, if you really are uncomfortable using Google, you can come across here and go deactivate autocomplete, and then it just becomes a manual thing. So then you can just go 123 Main Road. I'm just going to say Smithsville. This is not, obviously not a real place, but this is just purely for demonstrations purposes. I'll say Smithville because there is actually a Smithville in SA, I think. Anyway, are you currently employed? Another requirement that you do have to meet. If you say prefer not to say, it stays as unemployed by default. Otherwise, you can go yes and put in your occupation or no. And then there's a drop-down list of different things here. I'm a software developer, so I'll put that in and then I'll go next. And now we're telling our story. So this is the most important part of the process. This is where we do tell our story. Now, one thing I do recommend that you do actually is perhaps write this story in a Microsoft Word document first. Write it all in your own time. You can edit it in a Word document or whatever, and then copy and paste it in at the end. You don't have to do it that way, but I think that's just a good way for people so they don't feel rushed. You know, you'd hate to spend 45 minutes writing this and then suddenly your internet drops out or something, and then you lose it all. So my recommendation would definitely be write it separately and then copy and paste it in. That's what I've done here. So this is a story that loosely reflects my experience of the pandemic. I've written this in quite an official way, but the one thing I want to emphasize is that this doesn't need to be written in a way that is super literate and official and all of that kind of stuff. The idea is to just do it in your own terms. So you can use layman's terms. You don't need to utilize any legal terminology. Just write this. What I keep saying to people is just write it as though you're telling a story to a friend or a journalist or writing in a journal. Just in your own words. Don't stress too much about the grammar or the formatting or anything like that, because what this program will now do is take the story and turn it into something which is formatted correctly or formatted in a way that would meet that legal bar. Things over here on the right, these are just pointers about what you could write about, what you should perhaps consider excluding. But at the end of the day, this is your testimony. You don't need to take our advice. At the end of the day, you're the one who signs this document, so it's entirely up to you. One thing I do want to stress is this: do not write anything that is knowingly false or deceptive. That's a really important point. This is a legal document. It is being sworn, and therefore it does have to be true and honest. Now, you got a lot of flexibility and a lot of room to maneuver as long as you're being honest. So if you truly believe that something is true, or if you know in your heart that something is true, then you can write about it. You don't need to worry about legal consequences. But the point is to not be deliberately deceptive. So if you were to write, I suffered a vaccine injury and spent a month in hospital, when you only actually spent a day in hospital, then that's an obviously misleading statement. And that's the kind of thing which could, in theory, invite legal consequences down the road. So the point is, just stick to the truth. You don't need to provide evidence in support of your statement. So if you suffered a vaccine injury, for example, but you can't definitively prove it was the vaccine, but it happened within a short space of time and had all the hallmarks of a vaccine injury, but you don't necessarily have any evidence, that's fine. You can still write that because it is still something that happened to you. That is your truth. And you're not going to be hounded down and forced to provide evidence. Your word is your evidence, in a sense. So anyway, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with this story here. So I'm going to come and click submit. Then there's an opportunity to attach documentation. So if you want to attach, as you see up the top, doctor's notes, scan results, termination letters, any sort of evidence that does bolster your testimony, it's totally optional. You don't have to do this, as I just said, but it's something that some people may wish to do. Now, just on this note, I noticed earlier when I was testing, on some occasions, certain files weren't uploading correctly. So the declaration was being created just fine, but the attachment of the files was being a little bit silly earlier on. So it may work, it may not. I'm going to look at it overnight and hopefully resolve that overnight so it's ready for tomorrow. But just bear that in mind. If you are attaching documentation, there's a possibility that may not work, but it shouldn't affect the overall declaration. And we're happy. Click create draft. So this is the process now where it takes what you've just written and it passes it into multiple numbered points, and it actually is going to create 2 drafts. So there is you'll see it for yourself actually. So here we go. Your declaration is ready. So this is now our declaration draft. It's taken that story that I just wrote and it's broken it up into all these concise bullet points, which is the format that is required for a Commonwealth Stat Dec. Taken all those points, hasn't fundamentally altered anything about the testimony. It hasn't, watered down anything that I've said. It hasn't diluted anything. This is not the kind of AI program that is going to pull punches on your behalf. If you emphasize something in your testimony, that will be reflected in this draft here. So what we're looking at here is the first draft, the first of 2. Really, at the end of the day, you choose which draft mode. If I click across, you'll see that there are just some minor differences. The main difference between draft 1 and draft 2, draft 1 is designed to be a little more quote unquote conservative. I don't say that in an ideological sense. What I mean by that is that it's not going to rewrite things too extensively. So it's going to do the minimal amount of rewriting and it will focus primarily on structure, format, and that kind of thing. Whereas draft 2 is somewhat more creative in a sense. It will take liberty with your testimony and it may spice the language up or rewrite it in a way that is perhaps more, adds a bit of character or adds a little bit of flair to the original testimony. Not always. These things are inherently unpredictable, but what I encourage you to do is just jump back and forward between draft 1 and draft 2, decide which one is most suited to your testimony. But then once you've decided on which draft to proceed with, that's not the end of the story. You still have free reign to edit this as much as you want. So I noticed here on draft 2 that what it did is it said, your full name in brackets. That's one of the things that AI does. It's really trying to turn this into the most official statutory declaration possible. And sometimes what it does is it puts these placeholders in. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But if it does, it's very easy to edit. You just come across here to the right, click that button, that little pencil button, and then just edit it like any old text box. So I'm going to come across here, say I, Joel Pryor, click the save button, and so now we've updated the draft. If there's something down here that I don't like, that I want to exclude from the testimony, let's say point 13, I decide I no longer want that to be in there. Again, click the pencil icon, but this time click the bin icon, and that will delete it. You can also add paragraphs as well. So if you wanted to click that button, that'll add an additional paragraph. You can write whatever you want. If you, for whatever reason, really don't like this draft and you think it's not reflective of your original statement, you can just come through and delete all of them and then add paragraphs manually. So it's a little bit of a workaround if you don't happen to like the AI generated draft. But when you are happy, we come up here, we go submit draft 2. There's 3 consent boxes here. So there's one saying, do you want to use this email address as a contact detail on your declaration? Remember before I said you need to have either a phone or an email. So if you didn't put a phone in before, this is a good opportunity to put your email in. I consent to receiving occasional mailing updates. So that's basically just saying, do you want to go on the mailing list? There's going to be all sorts of follow-up activities and follow-up campaigns for this particular campaign. So I do encourage people to do that. I think everyone watching this video right now is probably already on the mailing list. But that's optional as well. If you uncheck it, you just get this notice here saying we can't notify you of follow-up activities. And the third one is a documentary. We want to create a documentary. We want to create some sort of video series based on the stories being shared through this campaign. And so if you want to be considered for that, if you think maybe your story might be worth including, you can check that one as the one down there, and then that just gives us consent to follow up with you. So I'm just going to put in my other account. And when I'm happy, I go send me my affidavit. I've got to change that button. It's not meant to say affidavit. It's meant to say declaration. So that's one thing I'll fix tonight. You wait for 15 to 30 seconds. This is a little time consuming because it's got to take what you've written, put it into a template, turn that template into a PDF file, and then send that PDF file to you via email. But it's been successful. There you go. Your fully formatted stat deck should arrive via email within the next minute. So if I come over here to my email address, and you'll see right there it's arrived. And so see if I can, that should be fine. So this is the email that I've now received. Each stat deck has its own unique ID. So make sure that you pay attention to that ID, because if you later want to use our online witnessing service, you will need to utilize this ID. Otherwise, everything else in here is just further information about how to get things witnessed, what the next steps involve. There are 4 different attachments to this email. So the most important one is the stat deck that we've just created. So obviously it's put our details, it's put in our declaration. The changes that we made manually have been reflected in the stat deck. And then there are some your signature, which you don't do yet. This is an important point. Print this off, but don't sign it yet. You have to sign it in the presence of a witness in order for this to carry legal weight. So don't do that straight away. Then the email, the contact details we put in, and the rest is done by the witness. So basically on your end, everything is done at this point, and the only next step is to find the witness. What other things do we do? We have a back page. So I'm encouraging people to staple this to the back page of their declaration. I don't know for a fact that this is a legal requirement, but I'm erring on the side of caution. The wording on the Attorney General is ambiguous. So that's just something you can print off. You don't need to change a single thing about it. You just staple it at the end. Pre-witness checklist. I'll come back to this in a moment. This is steps to follow if you want to utilize our online service. And then the campaign objectives here. This is an overview of, in a bit more detail what it is that we're trying to achieve. And there is a little bit at the bottom here about fundraising. As I've mentioned in the emails, this is a very expensive program. I've spent thousands of dollars on it. And that money's starting to come back. We've had a really good response in the last sort of 48, 72 hours. It's been really heartwarming, actually. So we're starting to climb our way back to break even. There's still a while to go yet, but promising signs. But anyway, that's the purpose of the fundraising. We do want to run this at very least at a break even point, and then ideally generate a surplus so that we can start investing in promotion and reaching people through online advertising. Because at the end of the day, we need to reach as many people as possible. And with all the censorship that's already going on, it's virtually impossible to do unless you invest money in promotion. So that's the other thing that we need to raise money for. But our first priority is not going broke. So the overheads come first. And then that's the 4 documents that are attached to the email that you receive. So I'll come back now to here. Stop sharing. I'm back. So one thing I'll get to these questions in a minute. It's good to see that there's a few people chiming in. That's great. What was I going to say? Well, the online witnessing. So my advice to you would be to go out to use the service. Go through the process, do what I've just done then, generate the declaration, and then get it sent to you via email, and then read through the resources and the attachments to the email, because that actually explains in quite sufficient detail what the witnessing process involves. But just to give you an overview, as I said, it's not legally valid until it's been signed in the presence of a qualified witness, qualified as defined by the federal government. So they've got all sorts of rules and regulations in terms of who is qualified to witness these things. So if you look at that email, there is actually a list of people, and you can research it in your own time, and then go out into your community and get it done that way. But if you wanted to utilize the online service, like I said, we basically got a video call. It's actually what we're doing right now with this video call platform. It is piggybacks on this. So what we're using right now is just a slight variation of that, custom made for the purpose of signing the stat decks, and that's how it works. But it's hard for me to explain without showing you, and I don't want to overwhelm you with information. So like I said, just go through the process, look at those emails, and I trust you'll be able to figure it out for yourself. But if you do run into trouble, just email me. I'll try and help you through. First question, can anybody with declaration create the stat deck, or only paid members of Phase Chamber? This is everyone. We've intentionally made this publicly available for free. So there should be no restrictions or limitations on people. Yeah, so no need to be a paid member, no need to even be a free member, to be honest. You can just be a random member of the public coming in without any kind of credentials. The closest thing you have to come to like showing credentials is clicking a "I'm not a robot" box, and you actually don't have to click it; it does it automatically. So no. Short answer: you don't need to be a paid member. Have you thought of reaching out to Michael Gray Griffiths, who's interviewed thousands of people? Yes, I talk not so much in the last couple of weeks, but I do talk semi-regularly with Michael. I'm a big fan of what he's done, and I'm sure he's got a very deep contact list. So he would be a great resource for something like this. I feel a little bit sorry, actually. I was working towards something else with Michael. He may be listening right now, probably not, but I was working towards something with him. He was going to utilize my platform for something else. And then one thing led to another. I got snowed under, and we didn't end up doing it. So I hope I haven't offended him. But I'll make sure to reach out after this and yeah, re-engage with him, because I really love what he's done. I'm a big admirer. Got a compliment in there. Thank you. Another person is Russell Broadbent. Yes, I listened to Russell Broadbent speak in Canberra late last year for an AMPS event, the Too Many Dead public speaking tour that they did. I was in Canberra and I attended that, and Russell Broadbent was an amazing speaker. I haven't gone out much. I don't really hang around in affluent circles or anything, but I do think that Russell Broadbent is one of the most polished speakers I've ever seen in live. So yeah, again, big fan. I know he's busy, but hopefully I can get this to the point where it's got enough traction and momentum and something he wants to be involved with. Can't you add the supporting docs later when you get the PDF? Yeah, so at the end of the day, yeah, like it's not too important to attach them as part of the original PDF. If you utilize the remote witnessing service, the online service that we're providing, it does introduce a little bit of friction, because it means that you might have to, rather than everything being automatic, you might need to scan things across. So it adds an extra step in the process, hence why I want to fix it as soon as possible. But if you don't intend to utilize the online witnessing, then yeah, you can just like add your own documents. And at the end of the day, the documents they're kind of like supporting evidence. They complement the statutory declaration, but the declaration doesn't need them. It's not a necessary component. So, so yeah, it's up to you what you do. Have to go, but we'll be making declaration. Yeah, go for it. You know the URL. I'll finish talking in a second. I'll put the link in here. Does the witness have to see those extra documents? Not necessarily. It depends how you want to do it. If you want the documents to be a part of your formal declaration, if you actually want that to be part of the whole in an official sense, then yes, the witness would have to see them. But if you just want to informally attach them to the declaration, where like you have the declaration in one hand, that is your legal document, and then you happen to have these other documents which you present at the same time, it's not officially part of the declaration, but it's something that you're providing as a supplement to the declaration. Then yes, in that case, the witness doesn't have to see it. You don't need to upload them, and you can do that your own way. That's all the questions I've got at the moment. So at risk of boring anyone, I might just put those links in the live chat. You can go and check it out in your own time. I'll be able to see people engaging. I won't necessarily see what it is that you're doing, but I'll be able to see that things are. So I've got a bad habit. I'll get halfway through a sentence and then I get distracted by what's going on in the live chat. I need to conclude a thought before I start a new one. This format would be great to create letters that create liability, notice of liabilities. Yes, I've seen that going around. It could be done. Yeah, like just about anything can be done if you know how. So this is another good option. But anyway, look, I don't want to take up your time. So what I'll do, I'll go www. So I'll address that question in a second. I'll just put this link in the chat. So www.declarationproject.com.au. Let me make sure I've got that right. Open it in another tab. Yep. All right. So that's one link that'll get you there. Probably the best link to use, but if for whatever reason that doesn't work, you can always go phasechamber.com.au/declaration project. And that should take you to exactly the same place. Now, what was that question? I've got the instructions in front of me for witnessing Commonwealth Stat Dec, and it says, what if there are attachments to the statutory declarations? Attachments must be referred to and described in the body of the declaration. Yes. So if you go through the system and if you do upload them through the system that I provided, then it does attach everything into one cohesive whole, and there is those references and there is that appendix at the end. So that's how it works in practice. But what I was saying earlier is it depends in the way in which people want to go about it. If people don't feel that the evidence, the supporting documents are strictly necessary, then they can just leave them out and add them informally. But if they really do feel as though they want it to all be part of the same document, then utilize the platform that I've gone through tonight. That's probably the best way to do it, because then it does put it all together with all the correct references and stuff. What is your email, Joel? I'll put it in now. WinstonSmithInitiative.com. All right, that's my email there if anyone wants to reach me for any reason. And yeah, what's the time? 7:30. So we've been going for more than half an hour. I don't think we need to go any longer. Like I said, I'm a big fan of just going out there and getting the job done. So I'll give 30 more seconds. I'll have a sip of beer. If you have a question, speak now or forever hold your peace until the next webinar. I wish I had a sand timer. I used to have a 1 minute sand time, 1 hour sand timer, actually. It was very helpful for studying. All right, I think we're good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Go out, have a go. Hope it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, let me know. I'll do everything that I possibly can to make it work. Yeah. All right. So anyway, I'll keep answering these questions, but everyone who's happy, feel free to take off and let me know how you go. I appreciate it. But I will just keep, for those who are not taking off, I'll just answer this last question. Each attachment should be marked with the following. This is the type of document. I'll see if I can go back and show you an example. Just hold tight, whoever it is that's asking that question. I'm going to go back through my inbox and find one with an attachment, hopefully. Yeah, okay. So I'll share my screen. So this is how we've got it structured. So for those who attach their documents through the system, there'll be something like this. So each thing has its own its name, statutory declaration, supporting evidence, Exhibit A, and then it will attach the image there. And in the event, if it's a PDF file, it'll have a link to the PDF file which people can open on their own device. So that's how that works. That's how we've got it structured. We've had lawyers look at this. They're pretty satisfied with it. By all reports, the stat dec attachments are not as stringent as some other things. Like originally, we we're going to do this as the affidavit project. And the reason why we eventually pivoted from affidavits to stat decs is because affidavits are very strict and stringent when it comes to how things are attached and how things are witnessed and all the different formalities and processes and stuff. By comparison, stat decs are a bit less formal. So that's why we've decided to go that way. All right. Cheers, guys. Who do we send these to? Keep your eye on the declaration hub. So once it's printed, once it's created and printed and you've signed it and it's being witnessed and everything, you can do whatever you please with it. You can print off as many copies as you want. I'll leave that up to you. But in terms of what we're doing as a group, as a community, that's still being decided. So we want to get a bunch of these, a few hundred at least, get them all created. And then keep your eye on the declaration hub. That's one of the things that's referenced in the email that you'll receive. And I keep going back to it. Just read the email because the email's got a lot more information in it. But within that email, there is a link to the declaration hub. That's like the campaign's main page. And just keep checking in with that because as we have more updates, that's primarily where we will release them through. And they'll also come out via email as well. So at the moment, we're just in the rolling out phase. Hopefully the next few days go smoothly. We'll get some witnesses on board, get the online witnessing system up and running. And then once everything's humming along smoothly, hopefully by the beginning of next week, we'll turn our mind to what we actually do with these declarations. But in the meantime, if you want to take the initiative and do something else with them, we strongly encourage that, absolutely. And to be honest, even before the beginning of next week, hopefully by the end of this week, so within the next few days, we'll have a solid strategy in place. But unfortunately, I am just me, and I've been focused solely on the technical challenges. There are some people around me who are keen to get involved, and hopefully I can delegate some of that responsibility to them. But once I'm satisfied with how the technology is running, then we'll start thinking politics. But yeah. When is it going in front of the Senate, the MAD bill? I assume you're talking about the misinformation, disinformation bill. That's going in front of the Senate beginning next week. So there's an inquiry that's ongoing throughout this week. And then I believe beginning of next week is when they're going to begin to debate it. So very imminent. Fortunately, there's a lot of campaigns running already. So we do have a bit of momentum. This campaign remains relevant regardless of the outcome of what happens with the MAD bill. Like I said, I hope to God it gets shot down to pieces. This is a horrible piece of legislation. I can't even believe that it was proposed in the first place, although I can believe it actually, because that's exactly the type of thing that these people do. But worst case scenario, if it does get up, if it does pass, then this campaign's more relevant than ever before, because when they start trying to crack down on things, we'll have that layer of protection. We'll have these legal documents which you can't call something misinformation if it's been sworn before law, because what you're providing is evidence. A stat dec is a piece of evidence, and for them to say that it's misinformation, that implies that you're lying. And if they say that you're lying, then they're in effect accusing you of perjury, and that's a very serious accusation. So people aren't going to make that accusation unless they feel as though they can substantiate it, and obviously they won't because we got the truth on our side. So that's what this is all about. It's kind of like a checkmate almost, where they can try and shut us down, they can try and censor us, but in trying to shut us down and censor us, they inadvertently accuse us of perjury, which is a criminal accusation, and that will invite all sorts of attention on them, which they don't want to have to deal with. So this is a maneuver that we're doing that is relevant regardless of what happens with the MAD bill. But obviously, I'd love for the MAD bill to get held up, to drag on for another couple of weeks, give us time to build momentum, and then we can take it down. That's my vision for this. Anyway, November 27th is voting day, I think I heard, but they may have moved it forward and debate needs to happen in the Senate. So email objections to all independent senators. It's a very good point. This does come down. There's a select few crossbenchers in the Senate who will decide the fate of this bill. As I said, there's already a few campaigns that are targeting them, but there can never be too much pressure in a situation like this. The stakes are too high. I'll elaborate on this via email. Tonight's all about getting this technology up and running. Next couple of days are about getting the witnesses up and running. But then by the end of the week, I'll have another update with, okay, we've got 50, 100, 150 people with these declarations. What do they do with them? And yes, hitting up the independent senators is the most important thing right now. Labor already knows what they want to do. Coalition have said they'll oppose it. I'm not sure how strongly they'll oppose it, how firmly they'll oppose it, what concessions they'd be willing to make. But as things currently stand, the emphasis is on those crossbench senators, and that's who we need to put the pressure on. So once you get your declaration, as I said, feel free to take the initiative, go out, do whatever you want with it. It is your testimony, and you don't need to get permission from me or from anybody else. It's yours. So, yeah, I really don't. I'm not a big fan of gatekeepers. There's a lot of people operating in this scene who want to act as a bottleneck, and they want to be the ones who are cracking the whip and telling people what to do. But that's not my philosophy at all. I say, take the technology, use it as well as you possibly can, and then go out and do your own thing. But yes, we'll be showing more leadership on that within a few days. All right, I'm going to run off. I think you're all probably keen to get cracking on. So yeah, keep your eye on your email inbox. Have a go. Look at those links that I've left above. Try it out. Experiment. If something goes wrong, let me know. Don't panic. I will fix it. We're all going to be okay. We're all on the same team. We're all fighting for the right cause, and we'll get this done. I'm confident that we're going to have a good outcome. So thanks, guys. Appreciate your attention, and I'll see you all around soon.